I'm Bob Sullivan, the new host of AARP's The Perfect Scam podcast. And with Frank Abagnale and other top fraud experts, we're bringing you brand new episodes of America's most shocking scam stories.
I got an email alerting me to 22 accounts that had been opened up in my name.
Scam was masterfully designed.
New episodes available now. Subscribe to the Perfect Scam podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This holiday, as we find more joy in the little things, we're reminded that love is all we need. That's why when you find yourself there, ready to ask if they'll be yours forever, Robbins Brothers, the engagement ring experts, is here with thousands of engagement rings, hand-selected diamonds, lifelong guarantees, and everything merry and bright for the perfect holiday proposal. Better yet, now through January 3rd, get no money down, no interest financing for 48 equal monthly payments. Visit your nearest Robbins Brothers for details. Subject to credit approval. Minimum $4,000 purchase required.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Jean Luc Brunel needs to be apprehended and sat down in front of investigators. This is a man who has been accused of rape and abuse and trafficking young girls for decades. And yet, nobody knows where he is? There are no stories on him, really? What in the hell is going on with Jean Luc Brunel, folks? All of a sudden, this guy is the international man of mystery, huh? He can just disappear, go off into the wind, and become a lamist, and nobody knows where he is. Oh, he's in South America. Oh, he's in France. Oh, he's in... Meanwhile, those of us who are living in reality are shaking our heads and wondering, who in the hell is protecting this man? Today's article is from Fox News, and I think it's pretty awesome to see that Fox News has decided to write a relatively lengthy article here about Jean Luc Brunel. He is a very, very, very important piece of this puzzle. He acted as Jeffrey Epstein's top facilitator and procurer over in Europe. He was bringing girls over to Jeffrey Epstein and for the trafficking ring from just so many different countries, Eastern European countries, countries in Southern Europe, countries in Western Europe. And these girls would come to America thinking that they're going to be models, and they'd find themselves in an apartment on East 66th Street, sleeping 6 girls to an apartment, and those dreams that they were promised, well, they never showed up. The headline, where is Jean Luc Brunel, the mysterious French modeling agent linked to Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring? This article was authored by Holly McKay. For the women who allege to have been abused by Jean Luc Brunel, the famed French modeling agent, child abuser, sex trafficker, and Jeffrey Epstein associate, justice has been non-existent. And I think a lot of that has to do with his citizenship, right? It doesn't seem to me that France is hard on people who are involved in these sort of sex crimes. I mean, look at Roman Polanski. You would think that if you were the French government, that you would be apoplectic over something like this, and you'd want to pursue justice and work with the international community. But France, they don't have an extradition treaty with America, and I'll tell you what, even if they did, I doubt that they would turn Jean Luc Brunel over. But the most galling part, for me anyway, is he's not only accused of crimes in America, but he is accused of these same crimes in France. And the French authorities have been even worse than the authorities in England at this point, or America. I mean, not even a real investigation. It's an absolute joke that this man, Jean Luc Brunel, is able to maneuver and work the way he does without ever having to face responsibility. The 74-year-old's whereabouts are still unknown, despite being deemed a critical accomplice with Epstein's web. And as far as being unknown, I don't know if I really buy that. I mean, we know that the intelligence services know where everybody is at all times. And I highly doubt that somebody like Jean Luc Brunel is just off of the radar. What, this guy has the ability to just disappear into society? I don't believe that. These aren't the old days, right? And there are authorities out there in France or elsewhere who most certainly know where Jean Luc Brunel is. In the weeks following Epstein's death last August, Brunel's name came to light as an alleged collaborator in Epstein's supply of underage girls. French investigators were spurred to open a case against him in August, looking at his ties to Epstein, along with accusations of rape and assault. And, of course, they said they opened it, right? They said that they were looking into Jeffrey Epstein and Jean Luc Brunel and the human sex trafficking ring that they were involved with. But yet we have seen nothing from France. Not a word, nothing tangible, and there has been no movement to bring Jean Luc Brunel to justice. And it's an absolute joke. But a year on, and little progress has seemingly been made. Brunel's name surfaced in the recent trove of unsealed court documents as one of the many men involved in sexual acts with underage girls at Epstein's direction. And while, again, this information that came out in the sealed documents on that week ago, Thursday or whatever, there wasn't anything in those documents that those of us who have been following this were really shocked about, right? But again, those of us who were not following this the way we have been here on the podcast, well, it must have been a shock to see some of these names, right? Because, again, the legacy media has been negligent in their job, and they have not informed the people of just how big and just how far-ranging this sex trafficking operation truly was. This comes on the heels of the court documents unsealed last year from 2015, which included a series of alarming telephone messages from Brunel to Epstein, one in which the man appeared to have been offering Epstein an underage girl who could, in quotes, teach him Russian. And what the coded message there means is that Jean Luc Brunel has a Russian girl for Jeffrey Epstein to abuse. That's basically what that code means there. And what it also does, it also shows you that these guys were involved in a criminal conspiracy. And it also goes towards the point that this should already be a RICO case. If this was a RICO case, then Jean Luc Brunel and all the rest of these scuzzballs would have no place to hide and no place to run. And for some former models now going public with their claims, Brunel's name is more than a mere passing reference. It comes with a pang of memories. Thizia Hoosman, now 47, told Fox News that she was barely 18 years old in the fall of 1991 when her modeling agent in the Netherlands sent her to a lavish apartment building in central Paris belonging to Brunel, who promised her stardom under his tutelage as the founder of Karen Models. And I've spoken with Thizia on Twitter, and her story is just out of control, sad. What this man was allowed to do and what he was allowed to get away with is just beyond the pale of gross, and it is angering and maddening, and it is just completely and utterly unacceptable that a man like Jean Luc Brunel, who is accused of the things he is accused of, has been able to run around and continue with decades worth of the same abuse that he was basically outed for in the 80s and 90s. Yet almost immediately, the young model said she was overcome with discomfort. I asked him which was my bedroom, and he said, "Oh, you sleep in my bed." I thought he was joking, but in the end, I had to sleep on the floor of another girl's room. Every day he kept saying we must have sex. There was a lot of harassment, Hoosman told Fox News. Every day, I kept telling myself to leave. It didn't feel right, and I still hate myself that I didn't leave. And again, folks, remember, This isn't just, happening in a vacuum, right? These girls all were aspiring models. These girls all had big dreams of stardom and chasing their careers and becoming what they always thought they would be when they were little girls. And instead, they ran into this monster, Jean Luc Brunel, and he would work in concert with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And instead of them becoming models, they would end up being trafficked. She also noted that she and other young models were made to go to the club with Brunel and a bevy of his older businessman-type friends. On what turned out to be her last night at the Brunel dwellings, Husman remembers having 1 or 2 drinks at a club and suddenly being overcome with blurred vision and extreme dizziness. From there, it is pretty fragmented. I remember him taking me to his room, and I remember trying to get away. He ripped my blouse, and I blacked out, Husman alleged. I woke up naked, disoriented, bruises on my thighs. I knew I had been raped. This monster, all right? Thizia came out and reported this years ago. Told people what occurred. And nobody wanted to listen. The authorities didn't want to listen. The legacy media didn't want to listen. Nobody wanted to listen. Well, we hear you loud and clear now, Thizia. And one thing I can promise is that here on the Jeffrey Epstein podcast, the Jeffrey Epstein show, we will not ever stop shaking the trees in search of people like Jean Luc Brunel and in search of justice for all that he abused. Terrified, Husman said that she grabbed what few belongings she had brought and fled. Zoe Brock, a 17-year-old model, was also sent by an Australian agency to Brunel's home in Paris for work in the early 1990s and told that as a minor, it was the safest place for her to stay. Now remember, she's a minor, and she's being sent to this disgustoid Jean Luc Brunel. Neither model was informed that years earlier, Brunel was already the subject of a 1988 60 Minutes expose in which several young models accused him of sexual misconduct, including groping, drugging women's drinks, and rape. No investigation was opened, and it was business as usual in the industry. And again, these people all have blood on their hands. The people that were involved in this modeling industry, the people who let this continue to occur without any oversight, and the people who turned their cheek the other way when they knew that these girls were being sent to a predator, all bear responsibility for the abuse. Brock told Fox News that she, too, was immediately subject to Brunel's unwanted advances, and she later even discovered a spy hole built into the bathroom. But when it became clear to Brunel that she was not going to sleep with him despite the persistence, Brock recalled, she was kicked out. She believes Brunel has high-level government connections, hence why his alleged behavior has gone unchallenged for decades. Now, this is speculation on my part, folks, but I don't know too much about the government in France, but considering what we have seen elsewhere, it is not beyond the pale to think that Brunel was providing girls to people in the French government to abuse, and now those very same people are in turn defending and protecting Jean Luc Brunel. Again, I don't have any evidence of that, but it goes in line with what we have seen elsewhere. And I'm sure there's some of you out there listening who are much more locked into the French political scene and to what's going on as far as who's shifty over there, who's shady over there. So if you're out there listening to this podcast and you have some of that information and you want to clue me in on some of the inner workings of the French politics, and if some people over there are perhaps have their name mentioned and stuff like this, then shoot me an email and I'll take a bigger look at it. But it is not beyond the realm of possibility to think that there are people in the French government who are protecting Jean Luc Brunel the same way there were people in the U.S. government who were protecting Epstein. While Husman and Brock both understand that the statute of limitations has since passed, they are urging other alleged Brunel survivors to come forward. Husman still filed a police report against the agent last year. French authorities have also encouraged potential survivors or witnesses with ties to Epstein to come forward to aid their investigation. Anne-Claire Lejeune, a Paris-based attorney representing 4 alleged survivors against Brunel, including Hussman, told Fox News that while 3 of the cases have lapsed statute of limitations, there is a harassment case from 4 years ago she hopes will open the path to justice for all. And I think that is awesome news, right? Anytime that there's an opening for potential justice for people like this, I am all for it, even if it has nothing to do with their original crimes, right? I bring it up all the time, but look at Al Capone. Do you think that they wanted to put him away for tax evasion or for murder? At the end of the day, though, the idea is to put these scumbag criminals in prison. What we are trying to do is locate more survivors, and we absolutely need international cooperation for this, Lejeune stressed. American survivors can contact me. So if there are any survivors out there listening to this podcast who had anything to do with Jean Luc Brunel, Anne-Claire Lejeune, a Paris-based attorney, is saying that you can reach out to her to speak with her about Jean Luc Brunel. So if there's anyone out there listening who has had an experience with this man, who has been abused by this man and is looking for some justice, I think that perhaps contacting Miss Lejeune would be a good idea. Hussman said she knows of 11 other women who have gone to officials with accusations against Brunel. Brunel's accusers claim that for decades he has gotten away with destroying young lives despite his proclamations that he had launched the careers of everyone from Christy Turlington and Mila Jovovich to Jerry Hall and Monica Bellucci as a prominent scout dating back to the 1970s. Oh, well, if that's the case, then all of them should have some information about him, huh? How about we get them all sat down and we discuss just exactly who Jean Luc Brunel is. In addition to the 60 Minutes segment, allegations against Brunel were also spelled out in the 1995 book by Michael Gross titled Model, The Ugly Business of Beautiful Women. He was also a key figure in the 2005 criminal probe against Epstein ignited by the Palm Beach Police Department. An Ian Halperin book almost a decade later cast a similar strobe on the agent's alleged actions. Look, Michael Gross, we covered that story where he spent the night out with Jeffrey Epstein and the models and how the girl was, with Jean Luc Brunel, not Epstein, and how the girl was panicked and it was just a harrowing read. And it just goes to the fact that these modeling agencies, they need to have some oversight. I wouldn't send my daughter or son to some modeling scout for all of the money in the world. The home offices for Paris agency he founded, Karen Models, were raided last September, and his New York and Miami affiliates, MC2 Model Management, shut up shop soon after Epstein's death, and he faded from the party circuit. But for now, Brunel has not yet been charged or brought in to face a court of law. He needs to be put into this RICO case right away. He needs to be one of the first people mentioned, and he needs to be slapped with about 300 counts of RICO. This guy is an absolute monster. An attorney for Brunel, Corinne Dreyfus-Schmidt, said last year that her client firmly contests accusations in the press and will reserve his statements for justice officials. She declined further comment to Fox News this week, noting that nothing further has happened with the French Justice Department as of yet. And again, I'm not really qualified to speak on the Justice Department in France, but it would be nice to see some movement. It would be nice to see the French authorities take this seriously because Jean Luc Brunel is obviously a prolific serial rapist. While Brunel's whereabouts have been a mystery, filmmaker and journalist Matan Uziel told Fox News that based on cell phone tracking evidence and other clues as recently as July, he is still inside France, contradicting reports that he escaped to South America. Again, I never really believed those South America reports, right? That was just, people talking jazz, saying that his phone was pinging there. How do we know that he even had that phone at this point? And even here with this commentary about him being in France, I can't confirm that one way or the other. I mean, I guess I'll go with it because Uziel probably has more of a line onto and into what's going on over there. But we haven't seen any evidence one way or the other about this man being anywhere. Maybe he's being protected, but we know he is in France. We traced him in 2 different places and gave over that information, Uziel told Fox News. All right, so maybe they have the link on him. Maybe they know where he is. And like I suspect, and I'm sure most of you out there suspect as well, he is being protected by the French officials. Epstein owned a luxurious apartment on Avenue Foch in Paris, as did Brunel. Flight logs show that Brunel traveled on Epstein's private planes at least 25 times between 1998 and 2005. Just for a little bit of context, Bill Clinton is alleged to have flown on the plane 26 times. So anybody out there who thinks that Bill Clinton wasn't super close with Jeffrey Epstein, like Jean Luc Brunel close, well, you have not been paying attention, because he was. Visitor logs show the model manager also visited his friend some 67 times while Epstein was serving a brief sentence in a Florida county jail as part of a controversial 2008 plea deal over charges of soliciting a minor. Now imagine that, 60 plus times going to visit this guy in jail, huh? Yeah, he wasn't part of the leadership structure. Nah, he wasn't part of the command structure with the Core 4 and Ghislaine Maxwell. Just a good friend, that's all, folks. Brunel is also reported to have lived for a period at Epstein's Manhattan apartment, according to testimony from a former agency bookkeeper who vowed that in exchange for funding the agency, her ex-boss was getting the girls. And that was the deal, right? Epstein would come up with the money, he'd fund the agency for Jean Luc Brunel, and in return, Jean Luc Brunel would provide the girls to Jeffrey Epstein. In 2005, Brunel's Karen Models agency was rebranded MC2 Model Management, billing itself as a boutique agency with an alleged $1 million investment from Epstein. Around that same time, the FBI opened an investigation into Epstein's predatory behaviors. According to 2011 court filings based on accusers' testimonies, Brunel was one of Epstein's closest pals, and he left disturbing voice messages for the repudiated financier, pedophile, regarding young girls. Epstein and Brunel brought underage girls from all over the world, promising them modeling contracts, the suit claimed. Epstein and Brunel would then obtain a visa for these girls. They would charge the underage girls rent, presumably to live as underage prostitutes in the condos. And we've heard that several times, right? We heard that these girls would come over and they wouldn't even get any modeling gigs. They would end up being escorts and being sent out to spend time with other gross disgustoids in the orbit of Jeffrey Epstein and Jean Luc Brunel. And if they didn't perform their duties, they were thrown out, had their passports taken, etc., etc. And in court filings submitted in one of her defamation cases, Epstein survivor Virginia Roberts claimed that she had sex with Brunel multiple times at Epstein's orders and that Epstein told her he slept with over 1,000 Brunel girls. So, according to Virginia, who has been ironclad with her testimony, Jean Luc Brunel provided over 1,000 girls to be raped and abused by Jeffrey Epstein. Let that sink in for a minute, folks, and ask yourselves why the F this disgusting monster is still on the streets and why he is not rotting away in some disgusting, dilapidated prison. But the relationship between the agent and the convicted sex offender ruptured in the years after. In January 2015, Brunel and MC2 sued for damages that he claimed resulted from the notoriety and bad publicity generated by criminal charges that had been brought against Epstein involving the allegations of unlawful sexual contact with a minor. Brunel asserted that the false stories linking him to Epstein caused a tremendous loss of business. The case was thrown out. No shit it was. Again, this is another person who thought, all right, well, now that Epstein's been burned, I'm going to try and distance myself from him. But nobody was believing that. Not the court, not us, and most certainly not the girls that he abused. And while Brunel is accused in U.S. court documents of rape and procuring young women for Epstein, it is unclear if he is wanted by the U.S. government. The FBI declined to comment. French authorities also declined to speak on the matter. France does have an extradition treaty with the United States, and so far, Maxwell is the only person to have been charged in connection with Epstein. France does not, it should say. But the likes of Hoosman refused to give up. He took something from me, and you can never get that back. It has had a huge impact on my life, she added. At the time, I was too scared to go to the police. I just wanted to get out of Paris, and so I kept it to myself. But I will never forget, and I am grateful that I can now start to talk about it. Yes, Thesia, you most certainly can. And we're going to keep talking about it here on the Jeffrey Epstein Show until Jean Luc Brunel, the animal rapist of Paris, is brought to justice. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that pertain to this episode can be found in the description box. And to everybody who has donated to the GoFundMe, thank you very much. We'll be back later on, and we'll do it all over again.
Who are you texting?
My therapist.
You text with your therapist?
Text, video chat, call. Yep.
That sounds too easy. How did you find her?
I just went to betterhelp.com/save. She's a licensed therapist and it's all online. I connect when it's convenient for me and don't waste time driving anywhere. Plus, it's affordable.
I wonder if I should try it.
It's great to talk to someone in confidence. She's helped me sort out quite a few things. And right now you save 10% off the first month when you go through betterhelp.com/save.
betterhelp.com/save. Got it.
Still using a manual razor? Join the facial hair revolution with the Philips Norelco One Blade. This innovative tool lets you trim, edge, and shave your beard or stubble with ease. One Blade, your style, made simple. Available at Walmart.